Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to make a video for the beginner, the absolute, new to this world of DIY home theaters in your home. Um, for everyone who just is completely new to this and they want to build out their first home theater, whether that's in a bedroom, a basement, a living room, a dedicated home theater room that you're building from the ground up. If you're really lucky and designing every little aspect of it, your dream home theater. This is for you. If you are completely new to this, regardless of your budget, regardless of your room, and regardless of your age, even, this video is going to be for you if you want to get into this world of home theaters. So I'm going to take you through the process of all the main things you'll need to build out a basic 5.1, 7.1, or even Dolby Atmos home theater. Everything you'll need, just the very basics. We're not going to get into really advanced stuff like EQing, calibration, and stuff that's going to be for another set of videos in this type of series of things for beginners. You could even go back, and if you're a little bit further along, go back and look at my older videos for the more advanced stuff. But for now, I want to focus on the beginners, those DIYers who want to build out their first home theater. So, what is the first thing you're going to need? And this is not necessarily in order. So, what are you going to need? You're going to need a display, something to watch it on, right? Now, if you're real lucky, you can start off by just getting a projector and get the biggest, most immersive picture. But that's usually towards like the end game for a lot of people, is getting into that realm. So most people, me included, started off with a TV. And in terms of getting into this couldn't be the better time to get into it because the market is flooded now, especially with a lot of Chinese brands coming out, and they're not nearly as bad as they were, say, 5 or 6 years ago. So the cost of TVs and technology has just gone down so much. This is probably going to be one of the areas where you won't necessarily have to spend that much money. For instance, you can get a 65-inch LG 4K HD TV for as little as $399. Now that's crazy considering back when I was selling TVs in 2012. Some of the TVs in that 65-inch range from the name brands like Sony, Samsung, LG, Panasonic, when they were still selling TVs in North America, you were still paying, depending on the model, anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000. And now you can get a TV for 65-inch TV for $399. That's crazy. So you're going to need your display, right? So you got your LED TVs, your OLED TVs, and then you got some new hybrid stuff that's coming out, like the mini LED display TVs, which I haven't looked too much into because I'm into projectors right now. But maybe I'll do some videos about that in the future, talking about that tech. But once you've got your display figured out and the size you want to go with, depending on your budget, obviously bigger is better because it's going to be more immersive. It's going to make it feel more like a home theater, or it's going to make it feel more like a theater experience if it's a big, large screen, right? So obviously get the biggest one you can afford while still remembering you have to budget out for everything else you're going to need. So the next thing you're going to need is going to be a source or a playback system. So this is going to be like, say for instance, a gaming console, which is kind of like, it does everything. Like if you got like the PlayStation 5, it's a Blu-ray player. It has access to all the streaming services. It's got the internet on it. It plays games, obviously. So that's a good place to start because it has pretty much almost everything you would possibly need. And it can be a fairly good playback system too, because it can also do, music playback, for instance. But then you also have, of course, Blu-ray players and 4K Blu-ray players if you want to get into hard disk, video playback and own your media, which I highly suggest you own your media. I do suggest 4K Blu-rays over Blu-rays, but both of those will be better than DVDs. Don't go DVDs. That's 20 years ago. That's old tech, old sound, lostly sound, and compressed, non-HD video. So don't go DVD. Go, if you're going to go with physical media, go with Blu-ray, which is 1080p, or go with 4K, which is going to offer 4K resolution and that completely lossless Dolby Atmos or DTS:X full surround sound. So The other things too is like you got your, NVIDIA shields, you got various Google playback devices, you have Apple TV. There's so many different sources that you can play back from these days. So that's going to be your source where where the content's coming from. The next thing you're going to need is a AV receiver or a processor, but that's again usually if you're starting off with a lot of money, a huge budget. Processors are an end game thing, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Most people start off with receivers. So these days, you have your 5.1 basic receivers, and these can be had for as little as 200 to 300, $400. They're very cheap from brands like Sony, Denon, Marantz. I'm not sure what their cheapest is right now. What else? Onkyo, Pioneer. So these are your receiver brands. Some of the middle to low tier brands and even high end stuff. They do make some high end stuff, of course. Think of a receiver as the brain or the connective tissue of the entire home theater setup because everything is being connected into it and it's kind of distributing things where they need to go. It's distributing the video, it's distributing the audio. It takes the playback source info and then distributes it to the display and to the speakers. So it is one of the most important parts of the entire system because it's the sound, right? So you're going to want to budget a decent amount for this. And these days, I do recommend going 7.1 or higher if you can, if your budget allows for it. But don't let that discourage you too, because 5.1 still sounds incredible and it's much better than listening to a movie on your iPhone, which don't do that. Don't do it on your iPad. Don't do it on your laptop. Don't do it on a TV with just the TV speakers or even a sound bar. Those are not home theater. So in order to get true home theater surround sound experience, you need a bare minimum 5 speakers. So 5.1, the point one is the subwoofer. So once you've got that picked out, the next thing that's going to come in is the speakers, of course. So one important thing that I suggest you do when you're looking for speakers is make sure you buy the same brand of speakers. Try not to mix and match. This is one of the biggest mistakes that people who get into this for the first time make, and I included made this mistake when I was, I've been into home theater since I was maybe 15, 16 years old. And when I was first doing this and knew nothing, I was mixing and matching, Sony with Pioneer with Infinity. Like it was just, you don't want to do that. The reason you don't want to do that is because speakers all sound different. They're built different, different materials, different cabinets, different price points. And it's very easy to get bad sound if you start mixing and matching speaker brands. So at least try to stay consistent and pick one brand, like Klipsch, Sony, Pioneer, Kef, Paradigm, Martin Logan. Some of these are higher end brands, but it doesn't matter. You get the point. You want to stick with the same brand so you have cohesive overall soundstage and the same timbre, which just means the speakers all sound relatively the same if they're in the same series. Now, of course, if you're looking at speakers, like they'll have different series, like Klipsch, Kef, so on and so forth. They'll have different series from, their cheapest to their absolute high end, which you can easily spend, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on speakers if you wanted to. And they're all going to sound different. And obviously, they kind of scale with price. The more you spend, the better they're going to sound, usually. There's some caveats there. But again, don't let this intimidate you. You don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars in the beginning to get good sound. So there are some really good, 5.1, 7.1, and even beyond options that can be had for a couple hundred to a couple $1,000s, depending on your budget. Another thing, though, going with speakers, and again, this is going to depend on your budget, is you need to decide right now whether you're going to start off with a 5.1 system, a 7.1 system, or a 7.2.4 system, which is Dolby Atmos. So Dolby Atmos is the big thing and has been for several years. Bare minimum, I would say, to get good Dolby Atmos, you need at least a very good 5.1 base layer system and then at least 2 overhead speakers. I tend not to like the bouncy house speakers, is what I like to call them. I'll show you a picture here where it's a speaker on top of a speaker and it shoots the audio up at the ceiling and is intended to bounce it back down. That can work, but I've never liked it. It's not going to ever sound as good as a dedicated speaker coming from where you want it to be. Like if you want sound to come from a certain spot, you need to usually have the speaker there. Now, when it gets into Dolby Atmos, that's a thing that's a topic for another video. But for the most part, you need to have a good bed layer of speakers to get started. Okay, so now that you got your speakers selected, you're going to also need something to connect them to the receiver with. So obviously we're going to need some speaker wire. I would recommend no thinner than 16 gauge. 14 gauge is a nice sweet spot. And if you have really long runs, you're definitely going to want to do 12 gauge speaker wire. Personally, in my theater, I do 12 gauge, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on this. Just get something that's 100% oxygen-free copper and you'll be good. Now, one thing you'll want to do is once you know where your receiver is going to be, whether it's, in front of you, off to the side, in a separate closet, make sure you measure the amount you're going to need before you cut everything. Try to keep everything the consistent length, even if, like, for instance, your receiver is right beneath your center channel speaker, and that's only going to be like, 2 or 3 feet. Still try to do the same amount of speaker wire per speaker. So for instance, keep everything the same length as your furthest speaker is away from your receiver. So if it's 30 or 40 feet away, try to do that much. Now, if you're really tight on budget, it's, no big deal. But personally, I like to keep all my speaker lengths the exact same, even if I only need, 2 or 5 feet for the center channel, for instance. So measure out everything. And you also want to give yourself a lot more speaker length than you need, because if you end up moving into a bigger house someday, a bigger space or a bigger room, whatever, then that makes it so you don't have to go out and buy another 200 or 300 feet of speaker cables and then cut them and then have a whole new set. See what I mean? So it helps to have maybe 10 to 20 extra feet per speaker, so that if you move into a bigger space, which is always ideal, that you don't have to go out and buy and then waste those shorter lengths of cable. So I recommend just giving yourself a little bit of extra. So that's a good segue into the next thing, is you're going to need some other cables to connect your audio gear. So you're going to need, a couple HDMI cables at least, right? Depending on how many sources you plug into your receiver, and then one from the receiver to the display. You're going to need at least one subwoofer cable. And depending on how old your gear is and what gear you're using, you might need like some RCA cables, fiber optic cables, component, like whatever. It depends on what type of gear you're trying to hook up. If you want to hook up, say for instance, older, like a VCR for some reason, or a older gaming console. So it just helps to think about everything you're going to need cable wise. And again, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on a cable. If you're spending $100 on a cable, you've done something wrong. So don't believe the whole snake oil of this high-end audio cable. You don't. It's not going to make it sound better or look better. Another thing people often overlook when they're first getting into this hobby too is protecting all your gear. You're going to want to invest a decent amount, maybe $20 to $50 or so, into a good surge protector that's going to protect all your gear. So something that's rated for those high voltage spikes that you might get in the power grid, or like if there was a lightning strike. And believe it or not, it happens a lot more often than you think. If you're part of the Facebook forums or any other forums of home theater groups, you'll hear people talking about, oh, there was a storm and all my gear got fried. So it's better to invest anywhere between, $30 to even up to $100 or so in a good surge protector, or even power conditioner would be even better if your budget allows for it, to protect your gear, because that $100 to $200 power conditioner or $50 power strip can save your hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of equipment. For instance, in my system, I have a rack mounted home theater system. All of that is plugged into a Panamax power conditioner. So definitely think about protecting your equipment. They even make tiny little outlet protectors for just your subwoofers. And those range from $10 to maybe $30 each on Amazon. Another thing that I would then consider, which this would be the last on the list of things to consider, would be the looks of the room, the aesthetic of the room. So that would be the like curtains, drapes, the rugs. If you want to do a blackout wall with triple black velvet, which is what I do in my theater, if your space allows for it, just think about the way you want the theater to look and feel when you go in. Of course, everyone's situation is going to be different depending on the room size and whether it's in a dedicated space or it's in a living room, right? But just think about the aesthetics and how much money you want to budget for making the room kind of look and feel like the theater you want it to look like. So, if you get really into this down the line, you may want to think about acoustic panels. If you've got a rectangular room with parallel walls, you're definitely going to want to put acoustic treatment up at some point, because hard, smooth surfaces are one of the worst things for sound in a home theater. So for instance, if you have hardwood floors or concrete floors in a living room, if that's where a theater is going to go, then you're definitely going to want to invest in a good rug or carpet to absorb some of those, reflections that you're going to get, because they will make your room sound worse if you don't tame that. And then another thing to think about would be also budgeting some money for just the seating. You want to be comfortable. Now, you don't have to go all out and spend thousands of dollars on custom home theater chairs. Those can be quite expensive. I don't even have that in this space, just because I'd rather have the best looking picture and best sound and get it upgraded before I started upgrading to actual Tuscany, Valencia home theater seats. That's going to be the least of my concerns. So you just want something that's going to be comfortable and that you and your spouse can sit on, or your family can sit on for 2 to 3 hours and be comfortable watching a movie. You don't want to get something super cheap that's uncomfortable and is horrible to sit in, and then you get out and you're like, after a 2 or 3 hour movie, you're not feeling good. You want something that's comfortable. So maybe budget a little bit there too for just your seating arrangement. All right, so that just about does it for this video. If you guys have anything that you guys want mentioned in a new video, any concerns or problems you guys are having if you're first getting into this hobby, go ahead and sound off in the comments below. And if you like this video and it was helpful for you, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, or if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you'll be notified when the next video drops. I do monthly home theater review videos and tech videos for home theater, anything and everything home theater and hi-fi. So until then, thanks for watching and happy listening.